You know, we think of a nation's constitution as this foundational promise, right? But what happens when that promise gets put on trial? Not in a stuffy courtroom, but out in the streets by a generation that feels totally betrayed. Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today with Nepal. In September of 2025, when smoke was billowing from Nepal's parliament, it was this painful moment of clarity. As the analyst Dr. Ryan Baidya puts it here, that fire did more than just burn down a building. It burned away this really dangerous illusion, the idea that just because you call yourself a republic, you're automatically a democracy. It's not that simple. And let's be absolutely clear, this was not just symbolic. The human cost was devastating, just gut-wrenching. At least 19 protesters, most of them young people, were killed in the streets. That was the tragic price they paid for a system that had just stopped listening. So the big question is, right, how did it come to this? How does a republic born with so much hope and optimism back in 2008 end up here, with its parliament literally in ashes and its young people in open revolt? Let's trace those final explosive moments. Things just escalated incredibly fast. I mean, look at this timeline. On September 4th, the government bans major social media platforms, which, is a lifeline for an entire generation. 4 days later, a youth rally is met with live bullets. That was it. That was the point of no return. The very next day, Parliament was on fire. And this is where it gets really wild, protesters just completely bypassed the entire political class, set up an online poll, and chose their own interim leader. A revolution happening in real time. Now, here's where this analysis gets really, really interesting. The argument is that this revolt wasn't just about a few bad politicians or one bad decision. No, the problem runs much, much deeper. It goes right into the DNA of the nation's foundational document itself, the 2015 Constitution. Dr. Baidya uses this really powerful term to diagnose the core issue. He says Nepal was operating as a control state. So what does that mean? Well, think of it like this. It's a model where the government sees itself as the master, standing way up above the people it's supposed to serve. It treats citizens like subjects to be managed. And elections, they're just a temporary license to rule without any real day-to-day accountability. And this slide just lays out that master-servant relationship so perfectly. I mean, a healthy republic is supposed to work like what you see on the left. The citizen is the boss, the master, and the state is the employee, the servant. But in Nepal, the reality was the total opposite. It was completely inverted. The state acted like the master, and citizens were treated like servants. This wasn't just a feeling people had. It was a structural failure baked right into the system. And this chart does a brilliant job of showing us why that happened. When you actually break down the DNA of the Constitution, you find that a whopping 65% of it is just borrowed. It's architecture taken from India, from the British Westminster system, from other global models. Only about a third of it is organically Nepali. The result? A system that was essentially copy-pasted. It was like a foreign machine that never really connected with the country's own political culture, and that made it super easy for elites to exploit. But, okay, this analysis isn't all doom and gloom. It doesn't just diagnose the problem. It actually proposes a solution. And the vision is to transform Nepal from that control state into what's called a service state. So, a service state is pretty much the exact opposite of a control state. It's a system that's designed from the ground up to be continuously answerable to the people, not just on election day, but every single day. In this kind of model, every public office is treated like a sacred trust, a fiduciary duty. The state exists for one reason and one reason only, to serve the citizen, period. And hey, this isn't just some abstract pie-in-the-sky idea. The source lays out some really concrete steps for how you would build this accountability right into the wiring of the system. Imagine first a truly independent police of police. Basically, who polices the police? Then a powerful Citizen Fiscal Guardian with real teeth to stop public money from being wasted. And maybe most important of all, a constitution that's designed to be a living document, with ways for every single generation to update it. This brings us to a much bigger, more universal idea here, one that's relevant way, way beyond Nepal. At its core, this whole thing is about understanding that constitutions are not sacred texts that we should worship. They're tools. They're designed by people, for people, to serve the people. And look, for a tool to be useful, you have to be able to, well, use it. And that's where this comparison is just so striking. Nepal's 2015 constitution is an insane 80,000 words long. For perspective, the entire US Constitution is about 4,300 words. It just makes you ask a critical question. When a country's foundational rulebook is so complex that a normal person can't even understand it, who is it really for? Is it a tool for citizens, or is it a weapon for elites? You know, this idea isn't even new. Thomas Jefferson was arguing for this stuff over 200 years ago. He literally believed that no generation has the right to chain another to a set of rules forever. A constitution, he said, should basically expire. If it's forced on a new generation without their consent, it's not an act of right, it's an act of force. It's such a powerful argument for why every generation has to have a shot at renewing its own social contract. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question that the author poses. The events in Nepal are a huge warning sign that when a system stops working for the people will eventually rise up and demand a new one. The real challenge isn't just about fixing the old broken parts. It's about having the courage to build something new, something better. Because if we don't, what on earth are we going to say to the next generation when they look at us and ask why nothing ever changed?